Hot news just in. So Chicago was just named the #1 best big city in the United States. And this is an incredible honor for Chicago and something that us as Chicagoans are very proud of. But even more impressive is this is the 7th year in a row being named in that #1 spot by Condé Nast Travelers magazine. So why does Chicago rank consistently at the front of the pack for the best big city to live in? Well, that's what this video is going to be about. For me, it seems very obvious. However, there's a lot of differing opinions out there about Chicago, and you may have seen something or read something in the news about how Chicago is not a great place to live. Well, the proof is in the pudding. The Reader's Choice Awards have named us #1 for the last 7 years. So today we're gonna dive in to what are some of the factors that actually allow Chicago to have that #1 spot and continue to have that year after year. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jordan Pyle and I'm your go-to Chicago real estate agent. My team and I have been servicing the city of Chicago for the last 10 years and we'd be honored to help you achieve your real estate goals. So if you have any questions about moving to Chicago or perhaps moving around in Chicago, we get calls, texts, emails, and DMs from people just like you every single day talking about moving to Chicago or moving in Chicago within 9 days or sometimes even 90 days or more. So if you're in that situation, you have any questions and you want a tailored approach to your real estate goals, feel free to just text the number on the screen and one of my team members or myself will get in touch within 24 hours. So without further ado, let's get on into today's video. But before you go, check out the resources down in the description and do us a favor and like, comment, and subscribe and turn on the notifications so you can be the first to know about all things Chicago. All right, so getting into the nitty gritty of Chicago, I'm just gonna read word for word here from one of the articles, and it says, Chicago is a world-class destination known for its impressive architecture, first-rate museums, top schools, world-renowned restaurants, affordable cost of living, and a never-ending bucket list of things to do. So it's easy to understand why Chicago is loved not just by locals, but by tourists as well. So that being said, I wanna just give you an idea of what other cities, because yeah, it's awesome that Chicago ranked #1. We're very proud of that as Chicagoans, as I mentioned earlier. And for anyone that might be thinking about moving here, well, that's an awesome thing to hear about Chicago if you're gonna be calling it home. But it's good for you to be able to compare some of these other cities. So I'm gonna give you the list from number 10 to #1. And starting off at number 10, it is Miami, Florida. Number 9 came in at Washington, D.C., and then Nashville, Tennessee at number 8, New York City, number 7, Boston at number 6, San Francisco at number 5, New Orleans at number 4, 3 was Milwaukee, Wisconsin, number 2 spot, the runner-up was San Diego, California, and number 1, of course, the Windy City. All right, so back to Chicago. So as I've talked about on this channel before, one thing that is unique about Chicago is there are actually 77 different neighborhoods. So there's really something for everyone. So in a recent release, Mayor Brandon Johnson said the following. He said, "This is a distinction to be proud of, and we will continue to welcome travelers from all over the world to experience all our city has to offer in the soul of Chicago." So again, this is something that we are taking a lot of pride in. You know, Chicago has had a bad rap in the last few years. And so for it to continually make the list as #1 spot, well, I hope this turns some heads and allows people to really see behind the curtain, to really lift up the hood to make sure that you are getting the accurate picture of how it is living here in Chicago. Because I've lived here for the last 10, almost 11 years, and I tend to like Chicago more and more. Of course, just like any large metropolitan, big city in the United States, we have our fair share of problems. But obviously with the votes of over 520,000 people that read the Condé Nast Travelers magazine, all of those have pointed towards Chicago being #1. So what can we say? So here are some of the things that I wanted to mention regarding Chicago. But before we get into these 6 or 7 different bullet points, I just wanted to state that summer of 2023, according to my iPad here, performance data from Choose Chicago shows that the city is on track to surpass last year when almost 50 million visitors came to town. It says the city is also becoming more popular for tourists worldwide, and international visitation this summer increased by 13% year over year. And that's a pretty big jump. You know, a lot of people are talking about Chicago and the reputation of Chicago worsening and less people coming to Chicago. So obviously what you hear versus what the actual stats are can be a lot different. So now that we have covered that, I wanna break down the following categories of just a few, not all, and it's definitely not comprehensive of why Chicago is crowned #1 year after year, but these are some of the reasons I think. The first being Lake Michigan. You know, it's basically this massive body of water, and it really does feel like you have an ocean out your front door with the most picturesque skyline in adjacent to that, right? And so the next thing on the list is the best skyline in the country. So I kind of just alluded to that. Great shopping makes the list. Most affordable, large metropolitan city. That is a true statement. Also the plethora of sports teams that we have available to us here in Chicago. And then the last one I have on the list for today's video is the restaurant and food scenes. So again, to talk about the first bullet point, well, Lake Michigan. Not only do we have the body of water, which is incredible, and there are a lot of different advantages with that, whether you like to boat or you like to go swimming, or maybe just having, the lakefront breeze off of the lake coming into the city. That is something that you enjoy, but it also creates the lakefront path. And the lakefront path is one of those things that you just really can't experience in a lot of cities. So it feels like you're running along the lakefront, which almost feels like an ocean, but you have an incredible skyline behind you. And this is something that's very rare. And these areas are, kind of intermixed and in between, some different green spaces and some different parks and things like that. So really having Lake Michigan and therefore the lakefront path available to us, this is something that Chicagoans absolutely love. Next up on the list is we have the best skyline in the country. Now, I understand this can be argued, whether it be New York. That would probably be the other one that I would think of if I'm thinking best skylines. But in my opinion, just the picturesque skyline of Chicago and all that it is, and it continues to change every single day, which is so cool. With all the new construction coming up in the city, we've seen it really transform. Just since I've been here over the last 10 years, I've seen the skyline transform, and I can only imagine what it used to look like 100 plus years ago. So we'll continue to transform. There will continually be new developments popping up and around the city, filling in some of the areas and making it overall more dense. But the city skyline in Chicago is the next reason why I think it makes #1 on the list. Next up, we have great shopping. So of course you've heard of Michigan Ave, any type of shopping that you want to go shopping for, you're gonna find here in Chicago. So this is something that more, not necessarily from a resident standpoint, it is obviously very nice to have, but from a tourist standpoint, this is something that attracts people to Chicago on a frequent basis. So if you're looking to pick up your Louis bags or you're looking to go to the Nike store on Michigan Ave, Chicago is a great spot for you to achieve all your shopping needs and to spend all of your hard-earned money. So talking about money, this is actually, Chicago is the most affordable large metropolitan. So we're comparing to cities such as, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Boston, Miami. Chicago is the most affordable big city. So yeah, maybe it's not the most affordable city that you can ever live in that regard, it is more expensive because it is a big city. However, in comparison, if you're seeking a large metropolitan, and let's just call it the top 5 in the United States, well, Chicago, your dollar and your value is gonna go a lot further. So you're gonna have ultimately a lot more bang for your buck as it relates to real estate, as it relates to groceries, general cost of living. It is the most affordable large metropolitan, which is definitely one of the huge, probably #1 reason, if not top 3 reasons why Chicago continuously comes in at #1 on the list. All right, so the last 2 we're gonna talk about, the next one is a plethora of sports teams to choose from. So if you're a resident here or you're a tourist, coming to Chicago to catch a sports game is something that pretty much you can catch at any time of the year because of the sports teams and professional sports teams at that in every season of the year. So whether you're rooting for the Chicago Bulls, maybe catching a midday Saturday game at Wrigley Field for the Cubs game, or maybe even jumping down to the Sox Stadium at Guaranteed Rate Field, or catching Chicago Fire or the Blackhawks play, hockey. There's just so many teams to root for and to be able to cheer for and to go and attend games and watch on TV here in Chicago. And the sports scene is absolutely electric. So hopefully in the years to come, all of our sports teams will become a little bit better, as we haven't had the best teams in the best years the last few years. But one of my most memorable experiences being here in Chicago was in, I think, 2016, maybe 2017. It was my, 3rd or 4th year living in Chicago. The Chicago Cubs broke the curse and won the World Series. And in the same year, same season basically, just a little bit later, the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup. And that was a pride for Chicago I've never seen before. And the parades and how the city rallied around those 2 teams and the city of Chicago was something that I'm very proud to have been a part of and something I'll remember forever. So the last on the list today is the restaurants and food scenes, which draws tons of people to Chicago. And also being a resident of Chicago, well, having all these restaurants in your backyard, from Michelin star top rated restaurants to classic hot dog, Chicago hot dog, food stands. Chicago really has something for everybody. Depending on your taste and your appetite, you can really seek out a ton of great spots here in Chicago. And just to name a few of my favorites, there's a lot out there, but RPM Italian is one of my favorite. RPM Steak, I like both of the RPMs. Those are probably like honestly my top two in the city. And then if you want to go something more Chicago classic, obviously you have Portillo's. Everything from Portillo's to RPM Steak to the highest level, such as something like an Alinea, Chicago has it for you. So those 6 or 7 reasons are just some of the reasons why I think that Chicago is consistently ranked and voted #1 on the list for the top 10 best big cities in the United States. Let me know if you agree. Put your comments down below. Would love to hear from you. If you have any questions about real estate, just text the number on the screen. Myself or a team member will get in touch with you. I hope this has been helpful. Go Chicago. This is great news. We love hearing these types of news articles and publications about Chicago. And if you're thinking about moving here, if you have any questions about Chicago life, living, working, playing, well, this is the channel for you. So until next time, catch you on the next video.